1997, a man got hit with a $40 late fee for a rental copy of Apollo 13. That single receipt would eventually help kill a $6 billion company, spark a war with the biggest tech platforms on Earth, and rewrite the rules of how the entire world watches television. This is the story of how a DVD in an envelope startup became a $500 billion entertainment empire, and how it keeps winning even when it's losing subscribers. Losing shows and losing billions on content nobody remembers a year later. Reed Hastings wasn't a Hollywood guy. He was a software engineer who'd already sold one company for over $500 million. So when that late fee stung him, he didn't just grumble about it, he started asking a dangerous question. What if renting movies didn't have to feel like a punishment? What if there were no due dates, no late fees, no trip to a store at all? Together with Mark Randolph, he built Netflix on a wildly simple idea. Mail DVDs directly to people's homes, let them keep the disc as long as they wanted, then mail back the next one whenever they were ready. No storefront. No employee judging your taste in movies. Just a red envelope showing up in your mailbox like a gift. It sounds quaint now, but at the time, this was genuinely disruptive. Blockbuster had thousands of stores and a business model practically built on late fees, reportedly earning hundreds of millions of dollars a year just from customers forgetting to return tapes. Netflix removed that entire revenue stream from the equation by removing the pain point that created it. And here's the twist that most people forget. In the early 2000s, Netflix actually tried to sell itself to Blockbuster for $50 million. Blockbuster's executives reportedly laughed them out of the room. That decision would go down as one of the most expensive mistakes in corporate history, because a little over a decade later, Blockbuster was bankrupt, and Netflix was worth more than the entire video rental industry ever had been. But Hastings wasn't interested in being the best mail-order DVD company forever. He'd been watching internet speeds creep upward for years, and he understood something most media executives didn't yet grasp. Bandwidth was about to make physical discs obsolete. So in 2007, while DVD by mail was still Netflix's primary moneymaker, the company quietly launched a streaming feature, not as a replacement, but as a bonus tucked inside the existing subscription. It was clunky. The selection was thin. Nobody thought it would matter. Yet Hastings kept pouring resources into it, essentially betting the company's future against its own present-day cash cow. That's the kind of decision most executives are terrified to make, because it means competing against yourself before someone else forces you to. By the time streaming became the default way people watched Netflix, the company faced a new problem, one that would define its entire next chapter. It didn't own the rights to most of what people were watching. Every show and movie was licensed from studios, and those same studios were watching Netflix's growth with growing unease. Why would Disney or NBC or Warner Brothers keep renting out their crown jewels to a company that was becoming a direct competitor for eyeballs? One by one, the licensing deals started drying up or getting dramatically more expensive, so Netflix made another bet that looked insane at the time. If it couldn't reliably license great content, it would simply produce its own. In 2013, House of Cards premiered, and for the first time, Netflix original became a phrase that meant something. This wasn't just a defensive move, it was a total transformation of the business. Netflix stopped being a distributor and became a studio, competing directly with the very companies it used to license from. Today, the company spends somewhere around $17 to $18 billion a year producing and acquiring content. An almost unthinkable number that only makes sense once you understand what it's actually buying: control. When Netflix owns a show outright, it decides how the show is marketed, how long it stays on the platform, and most importantly, it never has to worry about a rival streamer yanking it away. Now here's where the business model gets genuinely clever. How exactly does a company justify spending that kind of money on content and still turn a healthy profit? The answer is the subscription itself, engineered with surgical precision. Netflix doesn't offer one price, it offers a ladder. A cheaper, ad-supported tier pulls in price-sensitive viewers in new markets. A standard tier serves the core mainstream audience. A premium tier, with 4K streaming and multiple simultaneous screens, captures households willing to pay more for quality and flexibility. This isn't guesswork. It's the result of relentless testing, because pricing itself is treated as a product to be optimized, not a number to be set once and forgotten. The advertising tier deserves special attention, because it represents one of Netflix's biggest strategic reversals. For years, Hastings insisted publicly that Netflix would never run ads. He considered it beneath the brand. Then subscriber growth slowed, competition intensified, and the math simply changed. The company introduced an ad-supported plan, and it turned out millions of people were perfectly happy watching a few commercials in exchange for a lower monthly bill. That ad business is now projected to roughly double year over year, expected to hit around $3 billion in revenue this year alone. It's no longer a side experiment. It's becoming a core pillar of the company's growth story. Then came the move that seemed almost suicidal on paper, cracking down on password sharing. For years, Netflix quietly tolerated friends and extended family piling onto a single account, treating it as a kind of long-term marketing investment. But eventually, leadership realized millions of households were watching Netflix without paying Netflix a single dollar. So the company forced the issue, requiring separate households to either pay an extra fee or create their own accounts. Critics predicted a mass exodus of furious customers. Instead, millions of freeloaders converted into paying subscribers and revenue climbed. It was a masterclass in an uncomfortable truth about business. Sometimes growth comes not from acquiring new customers, but from finally charging the ones you already have. None of this works, though, without keeping people glued to the platform once they've signed up. And that's where Netflix's most underrated advantage comes in, its recommendation algorithm. Every click, every pause, every show abandoned after one episode feeds into a system that tailors the entire homepage to each individual viewer. Even the thumbnail image you see for a show is personalized based on what's statistically likely to make you click. This isn't just a nice feature. It's core infrastructure. Netflix has said a huge portion of what people watch comes directly from these recommendations, which means the algorithm isn't just improving the experience, it's actively reducing the chance you'll get bored and cancel. That same data obsession extends into content decisions themselves. Netflix doesn't greenlight shows based purely on gut instinct or a producer's reputation. It studies viewing patterns at a granular level, genre preferences, completion rates, regional tastes, and uses that intelligence to decide what to fund next. This is a large part of why Netflix pushed so aggressively into international markets and non-English content. Shows produced in Korea, Spain, and elsewhere haven't just performed well locally, they've become global phenomena. Streaming into homes on every continent through the exact same app, the exact same interface, the exact same recommendation engine. Making all of this run smoothly requires an enormous, mostly invisible technological backbone. Streaming a show to hundreds of millions of screens simultaneously without endless buffering is a genuinely staggering engineering challenge. Netflix invested heavily in its own content delivery network, placing servers closer to users all over the world so that video doesn't have to travel as far to reach a screen. This kind of infrastructure investment doesn't generate flashy headlines like a new original series does, but it's arguably just as critical to keeping subscribers happy and retention rates high. Thus X. So where does all this leave Netflix financially right now? In its most recent quarter, the company pulled in revenue north of $12.5 billion, up double digits year over year, with net income landing around $3.4 billion for the quarter alone. Full-year revenue guidance sits north of $51 billion. That's not a scrappy disruptor anymore. That's one of the largest media companies that has ever existed. And despite spending close to $18 billion a year on content, the company still manages an operating margin above 30%. Proof that scale eventually turns even the most expensive business model into a genuinely profitable machine. But size doesn't mean Netflix is untouchable. Competition has never been fiercer. Disney Plus brings generational franchise power. Amazon can afford to treat Prime Video as a loss leader because it sells everything else. Apple TV Plus doesn't need streaming to be profitable at all, it just needs to sell more iPhones. And increasingly, the real threat isn't another streaming service. It's YouTube and TikTok, quietly eating up viewing hours with free, algorithm-driven short-form content. Engagement growth has noticeably cooled, and Wall Street has taken notice, with the stock swinging sharply on even modest guidance misses. Add in the staggering cost of producing prestige television at scale, and you start to see the tightrope Netflix is walking. Spend too little on content and subscribers drift away. Spend too much and margins collapse. That's why the next few years matter. Live sports and events are becoming a new battleground because they drive signups despite high production costs. Gaming remains an unproven long-term bet. And advertising, once dismissed, may become the company's biggest growth engine yet. Netflix's story isn't about one brilliant decision, It's about repeatedly making uncomfortable ones. Killing its own DVD business, alienating password sharers, reversing its anti-advertising stance the moment the data demanded it. Each shift risked what was already working. Each proved necessary. The lesson for entrepreneurs: comfortable businesses get disrupted by less comfortable ones. Netflix built its empire by treating success as temporary, cannibalizing its own profits before competitors could, and trusting data over ego. Blockbuster once could have bought Netflix for pocket change and passed. Netflix never stopped acting like that could happen to them too, and that paranoia built the streaming giant we know today.